Hey guys, we're ready for Pilates and Core. Jessica's going to take you through some Pilates exercises and I'm going to work along with you, and then we're going to do a few core exercises at the end. So remember, if you're doing this segment, make sure you do the warm-up and the slow stretch at the end of the workout. All right, Jessica, let's start with some ab preps. Okay, it's nice because on this KUSHH surface you have some depression. Now what you want to make sure before you do this is that you engage the pelvic floor and make sure that you don't overextend the spine. So go ahead, Jessica. Pulling your knees up at a nice right angle, knees above the hips, hands behind. And as you're curling up and down here, remember to extend the spine and press down gently into the surface of the KUSHH as you're curling up and down. Now the number of reps here is, of course, dependent upon your fitness goal and how used to the movements you are. So if you're not doing Pilates now or you haven't practiced Pilates, start taking some classes and learning how to do the movements before you put them on the KUSHH. Good, Jessica. Nice job. And as she's curling up, you see she's not moving her elbows so much, she's using her upper body. And this is the ab prep exercise, which is going to be followed by the breaststroke preps. Good job. Alrighty. So as she finishes up with those, she's going to transition now. And she's transitioning into the breaststroke. And we're doing this a little different. What we're doing on this particular exercise is we're having her come down on top of the KUSHH. Now remember, this is a great position to be in on the KUSHH. You can't really get into this position on the floor comfortably. Even with a mat, it's questionable. But she's buried into the top of the KUSHH, lifting her head and sliding her hands back, and now she's doing these breaststroke preps. Okay? We're having her keep her arms at her side here, and she's engaging. Again, the breathing is very important here. Exhaling on the top, at the top of the movement, and exhaling as she's coming down. So inhaling at the top of the movement and exhaling as she's coming down. Remember that the breathing is very important. Good, and she can slide her hands back just a little bit at the top of each movement to accentuate the movement. Remember not to compress the spine, but to lift out and elevate as you're coming up out of this movement. Again, the glutes can be a little bit engaged, hips are open, or the sense of feeling open in the hips as you're coming up and down out of this movement. Good job, Jessica. So she's inhaling as she comes up, and she is exhaling as she comes down. And again, there's very little sliding of the arms, but an engagement here in the erector spine. And remember, those are the filet mignons that line the back, also part of the core. And again, core is all the muscles, of course, it would touch. All right, we're moving on to a shell stretch now. And the shell stretch can be done a number of different ways. We're going to show you the first way here today, and at the end of the workout, we'll show you the second way. But it's almost like a child's pose. It lays back, and she has her hands cupped around the front of the KUSHH. This way, her wrist can relax, and she's pushing gently into the forearms. Again, the head is rested, the neck is relaxed, pushing back and sitting on the hips, releasing that spine and elongating through the extensors, which is what she just contracted. Very nice stretch because it's nice and rounded, and it's preparing her in this rest position for the next execution, which is going to be hundreds. So as she transitions into the 100 move, she's just going to simply lie back down in a supine position, and once again, feeling that great comforting, cushioning effect of the KUSHH. She's going to go ahead and bring her legs up. Now in the hundreds, you know that you are typically doing 100 of these little tiny small presses with the breath. And as she's counting and doing these, I'm going to show you that if you look closely at her body line from her hips to her shoulders, there's a little bit of an S line or a wavy line there. That's because she's sinking down into the cushioning of the top of the KUSHH platform itself, and she's in a much more comfortable position. Now what you want to avoid here is too much relaxation in the core, too much relaxation at the hip bowl. You want to stay in neutral spine, but you are again cushioned and comfortable. So you can see that she's breathing out here, and she may be able to take it up into a more intense movement by lifting the legs straight up or bringing the legs out a little bit. As you well know, that takes the intensity up. And as she counts down through these hundreds and breathes out, she can feel this execution, which is a stability exercise. It's a stable exercise, not dynamic. The only dynamics are coming from the shoulders, and that small movement triggers the stability action or the holding action of the core. So those hundreds are great. We're going to go right into half rollbacks here. This is great on the KUSHH. Because she is displacing weight from the hips to the upper body, she's able to roll back on the KUSHH and use it as a nice comforting surface. And as she's rolling back and coming up, she's engaging the core, rounding the spine as she comes back. Again, using the breath as she's moving in and out of the movement. And what's nice about this is she can have her feet on the floor. This gives her a little bit more control over the movement and a little bit more command over the movement. Well, as you well know, when people are first starting an exercise program, sometimes they feel unsuccessful if they can't do the movements, and the KUSHH allows people to get into movements they would normally not be able to get into, or certainly range of motion movements or depression that they wouldn't be able to get through on a normal mat, and this is also very helpful here. So let's just get one more of those, half roll back. And then we're going to go into one-leg circles. Now what I like about one-leg circles is that she is able to work off the plane that she's on and drop from the plane she's on, the level of the plane she's on, to a lower position on the floor. So watch as she takes her leg up. Now, typically leg circles go around and come down and back up. Now normally you would have just the floor surface to be doing this on, but because she can drop her leg just a little lower, just at the bottom of the movement before she brings it back up, she's getting a little bit more extension in the hip flexors, and that's a little bit more tension in the core and also through the entire trunk area in terms of stabilization. And again, breathing, and we have her with her hands at the side here, just with her thumbs rotated up and pressing in gently with a straight arm, skeletal length arm. And after she does this movement, she's going to reverse to the other leg, okay? So once again, these movements are nice because they come down lower than the plane that you're on. And that's a real important tip when we're talking about range of motion. Typically, in most classes where you're on a mat, you only have the floor as really a plane of movement. It stops you. You can't go lower than the floor. But when you're on the KUSHH, you can actually do things in spinal extension. That is unusual. It's wonderful for you. We get a lot of spinal flexion. We get a lot of movement or rounding in the anterior plane. This is something that triggers stability and holding patterns in the posterior planes. Good. Nice job, Jessica. Alrighty. So we're going to come up now for a spine twist. Take a deep breath. And exhale. And as we transition into the spinal twist, we're going to take, again, a great position on the KUSHH mat. And the spinal twist is very nice because you're basically using your trunk the entire time. So as she's turning here into the spinal twist, her legs are placed on the ground. This is opening her hips up a little bit, perhaps taking a little bit of the tension out of the back so that she can twist a little easier from one side to the other. And so this could be a progression into a spinal twist. And again, it's very important to sit up tall, keep that neutral spine, breathing in the proper execution. Good. So here's a very important exercise. We lose a lot of this rotary action as we get a little bit older. We don't twist the spine nearly enough. And if she's sitting up very tall, and her legs are down on the ground, so she has more range of motion than she would normally have. She's probably feeling a little bit more successful in this position, although I know she can do it in both positions. But for someone who's starting out and needs a little bit of help, or the need to feel a little bit more successful and then graduate up, what they would simply do is take the step down to a lower height with each set, and that would be a really good way to start. So starting up and then maybe coming down to the ground, so you're just finishing on the KUSHH mat itself. All right, so we had spine twist. Now we're going to do rolling like a ball. Rolling like a ball is exactly what it sounds like. She's on the surface of the KUSHH. She rolls back. In this position, it's very nice. It's very comfortable to roll back. You don't have that spine digging into a hard surface. And in this position, it feels a little bit more comfortable, almost like rolling back on the bed and coming up. And again, this is a little bit more tightening in the pelvic bowl, and it's also a little bit more challenging. So sometimes you'll get a movement that's easier because you have a soft surface, and sometimes the movement becomes harder. Sometimes it acts like a cushion, and sometimes it acts like a challenge in terms of stabilization. I'm going to do a few more of these, and then we're going to go into that single leg stretch, because after this, you really need that single leg stretch, and it feels really good. So again, she's laying on her back. She's got a nice cushioned platform under her, and she's sinking down. Again, making sure you remain in neutral position, making sure the abdominals are engaged. There's a bit of a feeling or sense of hollowing out through that front or anterior plane there on the core. And as she's moving her legs in and out, pointing her toes, and breathing with this exercise, she has a nice cushioned platform underneath in which to execute those. Great job. Good. And she's just doing a variation here of this nice single leg stretch. Good. When she finishes up here, we're going to move into obliques. You know this well. This is great to do on top of the cushion. Now, one of the things I want to caution you to do before you start this exercise is make sure you're centered, both at the hips and at the shoulders. And Jessica's nice and centered. She's going to check to make sure she is centered on there. And anytime during the exercise you feel yourself shift on top of the cushion, simply realign yourself and take a moment to do that. All right, now as she places her hands behind her back, this motion is starting as she twists and turns. You'll notice that she's bringing the knee to the elbow rather than the elbow to the knee. So the drawing of the legs is very important. And as you blow the breath out, that compression is increased with the muscles because you release the air, the muscle tension or engagement has a little bit more room to finish the movement. And then once again, if you think about the movement of this and the turning and the twisting, she's got a great surface to do this on, and she has to really engage her muscles a little bit more because her range of motion is increased just a tad. It makes a real nice movement pattern because it's supported there. All right, so she's going to lay there and relax and take a deep breath. Exhale. So now this is the rollover prep. Again, we're going into another prep. We started with the ab prep, and this is the rollover prep. And all you're going to do is just, again, nice position. Make sure your hips and your head are on the top of the cushion. And you're just going to reach back and then reach forward and pull those legs up. And right there is that nice prep work, and she's coming down slow. Good job. And again, she is maintaining good control, but she has a nice surface to do this on. She's able to come down slowly, not worry about the spine, rubbing against anything too hard. And she has a nice position to put her hands in too. She has her hands on top. You could just slide your hands a little bit more to the side or somewhere in between those two grips. And again, it's not really a grip, it's just a placement of the hands, flexing your feet and bringing it down slow. This is a great one for both sides of the core. It's sort of a unified exercise here. Remember that a core and the muscles in the core are anything a corset would touch. So think about having a corset on and where that corset would touch all the way around the body. And those are the main core muscles. And that's a good visual to remind you where those core muscles are. And she's finishing through here. And again, as she comes up over her head, you know, she is using her arms to balance, and as she's coming down, she's using her core and driving it down slow. And of course, the slower she goes, the more work and stabilization she gets out of the core. Good job, Jessica. All right, we're going into our second shell stretch here. So she's going to come back up and reposition herself for that shell stretch. The first one is just feet apart right here, and laying down right between the legs and just rounding that spine out and just releasing the low back here. It's just a great stretch in that position. Now you could do this, of course, with your feet up on the platform and your knees out. So you could do that, but instead of doing that right now, what I'll have her do is then move back and do a final stretch, which is the spine stretch forward. And that's going to be scooting back, and she's going to just take her legs on top in a butterfly position. She's going to put the soles of the feet slightly together and make a diamond shape with the legs, and then just drop forward here for the spine stretch. And this is a variation again. Nice position for the feet. Now the outsides of the feet being a hard surface, this is a much more comfortable position because they are embedded in the top of that cushion. It's a great feeling. It's nice and comfortable. Holding that stretch again, releasing the spine, rounding it through its natural motion, and enjoying that stretch as she breathes and relaxes through that. All right, we're going to do a couple of core exercises here just for fun to show you, even though Pilates is so much about the core. We're going to do a couple of more core exercises. What I want to show you is a side-lying lateral twist. And what you do is you turn perpendicular to the cush, and you come down sideways, and you put one hand on the floor. Your bottom leg is in front, your top leg is behind, and both legs are bent. And you're going to come up off the floor with one arm up, and then reach, and then twist gently and come back down. Now you can bring your hand all the way to the head, and you can reach back down to the floor, and slowly controlling each movement, you're working the lateral flexors of the spine. This is really important. This is a hard exercise to get. And the more flexible your participants are, the more flexible you are, the deeper you can go into that range of motion and come up and twist out of it. Isn't that great? So you get a great lateral flexion option when you're doing this on this step. And let's get one more, Jessica, and then we're going to turn to the other side. Good. So she's going to face me and just swing her legs over to the other side. And we're going to do this again, just making sure that we're treating both sides equally. And this is just a little bonus here for the core exercises. Remember, the top leg is in front, the bottom leg is, the bottom leg is in front, the top leg is behind. Sorry, and you come up and turn. Now the twist is optional. If you watch Jessica in the first set, she just came straight up. So you could do that and stop there. Or you can come up and twist around to the side and get a little bit more of that rotary action. Good. That's it. Nice rotation there at the top, a little external rotation. One of the things you want to make sure you're doing is lifting up out of the spine and making yourself tall as you twist. And we're going to get one more after this. We're going to go to a V seat, and then we're going to be done. So she's going to come up and twist. And nice job. All right, she's going to sit at the very end. She's going to lean back into a V seat. This is a hard exercise, believe it or not. And what makes it difficult is the position of the arms. So she's going to start with her arms at her chest, and she's just going to lean back and pick her legs up and go into just a balance point on her glutes, lifting one and then both legs. Now, participants can't do this, or you can't do this with both legs. Just do one at a time. Engage the core, lift tall, open the chest, bellow the rib cage, draw the shoulders back and down. And then one at a time, release the hands, bring them up by the side, and then if you so desire, bring them up above your head and hold that. Now if you had weights in your hands, you could do tricep extensions here, overhead tricep extension. This is a really great exercise. Now if you'll open the knees and keep the heels together, this takes a little bit more of the hip flexors out of the movement, engages the core a little bit more. And you just hold those and then lower down and repeat those 2 or 3 more times. Great. All right, that was our Pilates and core section. Lucky for me, Jessica did the whole thing. And then we're going to move on now to the very end of our workout, which is a slow stretch. So if you have done just the warm-up, this workout, go now to the slow stretch. If you're mixing it up, still got to go to the slow stretch. So we'll see you there in a few minutes.